All right, welcome back to another episode of Run Mountain Peaks. If you're watching this, you may be wondering, like, hey, this is not your normal studio setup. What's going on? I was robbed. No, well, actually, kind of. This week at work, broad daylight, Canal Street in Manchester, somebody hacked off my catalytic converter and like half of my exhaust pipe. So I'm in a rental, and it's actually a brand new 2025. I think it's called Ram Master. So it's a Ram, and it's just like an empty cargo van. The thing is huge. When I first was driving, I was like, "This is like a bus." Um, but yeah, so we're in the van today. So special van edition. I didn't trade my entire life in and go van life, although this is giving me little thoughts. Um, but no, so we're in the van today, and we got a few things on the that we're gonna chat about. So first up is the Pemi Loop, and specifically the Pemi Loop FKT. There were a couple FKT goes recently. So we're gonna talk through some of the times, look at maybe a couple different splits, and then I'm just gonna talk about like how I think about running a fast Pemi Loop. Um, so we'll talk about the Pemi. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Run Mountain Peaks and kind of why I started Run Mountain Peaks and like where I think maybe it's headed. Because I feel like I'm still pretty new at, the podcast, the YouTube channel and stuff. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Going to talk about deer hunting, which some people are going to be like, what? Huh? Yeah, going to talk a little bit about deer hunting. And then Bubbas happened last weekend. So we're going to run through the results. I did a little bit of a preview last week, and I talked a little bit about last man standing stuff. So we'll just run through the results of Bubbas. And that'll be kind of wrap up. Actually, also, I'm going to have a little Tecumseh story too at the end. I ran Tecumseh last week, rolled my ankle, which luckily is doing better now. And then I have a little Tecumseh was the first 4K I ever did, so I'll tell that story briefly. So that's what we got on the agenda today. So the Pemi Loop. The Pemi Loop FKT, one of the premier FKTs in the White Mountains. And I think over time, there's been a lot of, in the last handful of years, there's been a ton of action on the Pemi Loop. A ton of sluggers have came out and run super fast times on it. And I think that time is just so stout at this point. And so recently, David Sinclair, who I feel like had a huge year, popped onto the scene, second at CCC this year, which is just insane. He ran the boot spur throwdown earlier this year and did a crazy VK on that. Just a world-class runner. He came out and ran a 5:36 and change on the Pemi Loop, I think in the past week. So just blazing. Matt Chorney came out in the last, I think, month, and he ran a 5:37. So both within 10 minutes of the FKT. So I think it's, good time to talk about the Pemi Loop and kind of how I think about it. So there's kind of two FKTs for the Pemi Loops. And I'm going to specifically talk about the men's time because there's been a lot more, I think, recent goes on the men's Pemi Loop. The women's is, I think, about 6:30, Britta Clark, and she's had that for a while. So also super stout. But yeah, today we're going to talk about some of the men's times. So the supported men's time is Jordan Fields. I think he ran it in 2019 or 2020. And I think the story goes he was with a buddy and they kind of went out on a training run. They were going to run the Pemi Loop and up at like Bond Cliff. And they started for a training run. They were running very fast at the beginning. But at Bond Cliff, he was like, wow, we're running like pretty fast. We're on pace. I'm going to try to get the FKT. And so he went for it that day, ended up finishing, but because he ran it with somebody for the first 8 miles or whatever, it's technically a supported effort. So he ran a 5:27, and on the FKT website, it's technically supported, even though It wasn't like he had like aid stations or like drop bags or anything like that. It was just he ran with somebody at the beginning, was feeling good, and then he went for it. Um, and then the unsupported time, Jack Kenzel came and ran this, I think, a little bit after Jordan, a year or so after Jordan. He ran like a 5:35, so he missed Jordan's time, but technically got a new unsupported FKT. And then a couple years after that, maybe 1 year, maybe two, Jake Aceto, a local New Hampshire guy, came out and ran a 5:32. So Jake has the unsupported FKT on the Pemi Loop. And yeah, so a couple recent times, so 5:30s, two 5:30s recently, came super close. But I think we can talk about, yeah, so we can talk about some of the goes. The Pemi Loop has had a ton of action over the last handful of years. So Jack came out and ran it, and then after Jack came out, you had, I think, David Hedges got really close. He was like a minute or two off the unsupported time. I think Eric LaPuma came out and ran it. David Sinclair just ran it. Matt Chorney just ran it. I don't know if Jack came and ran it again the year after he got the time to try to go for Jordan's again. But just huge name sluggers, like elite world class runners, have come out and really gone for Jordan's time. Oh, and Jake Aceto, who has the FKT. He's super fast. I think he ran it like maybe one or two more times after he set the unsupported to go for Jordan's time again, and he missed. So it's just a super tough route, and I think it goes to show like Jordan running that time kind of like on a whim is just so insane. Um, I mean, he is a crazy good runner, crazy good athlete. If you look at some of his times that he's ran on things, it's just insane. He had the Prezi and the Hut Traverse before Jack came in and got it. If you look at, I think he ran Chikora a couple times and just won by like 7 or 8 minutes. So Jordan Fields just a stud. I think he moved out west, so I don't think he's local anymore. But I think it just goes to show like when you have that many elite guys come out and go for the same time and just time after time come up short, it really puts a ton of legitimacy and kind of lore on that time. So yeah, will the FKT ever get broken for the Pemi Loop? I think, like all records, eventually one day it will get broken. But is it going to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years? Who knows? Yeah, who knows? Although, and we're gonna talk about David Sinclair's recent effort. I think he mentioned, so he ran a 5:37. I think he said he ran it counterclockwise, and at like Flume or something, he was just bonking. Took a minute instead of bombing down the last descent before finishing. And I think he said maybe he'll have time the next month. He might come back and try it. So it could go down in a month because he did have a really good effort. I think if he didn't start bonking, he would have been close to Jordan's time. But I think it's kind of the story of the Pemi Loop. Everybody ends up bonking. I know when Jordan, I don't know if it's in his write up or podcast that he's talked about it. He pretty much said, I don't know if he had his like the correct fuel that he would have if he raced it, when he did it on a whim. But at the end of the route coming down Flume, he was bonking. He gets down to the Lincoln Woods Trail, which is like a mile and a half from the end, and he like stopped and had to like dip his head and everything in the river because he was just like bonking, overheating. Instead of running 1 mile to kind of get that time even a little bit lower. So, and I'm not sure it added that much time, but I think it just goes to show like people go all out, and at the end you're gonna be hurting. And so I think it's just a tough route. So let's talk about the route itself. There's two. So obviously it's a loop. It starts at the Lincoln Woods Trailhead. You go over the bridge. I think the Strava segment or the official start point of the FKT is like the bridge on the parking lot side. So that's where you start. And it's a loop, so you can go clockwise or counterclockwise. And you can pretty much choose. And depending on, maybe your strengths or what you think, I think there's reasons to go each direction. And so we're going to talk about those. So if you start out clockwise, we'll start with clockwise. You have about a 1.5 mile run to the Osseo Trail, and then you take the Osseo Trail up to Flume, and then you go northbound on Franconia Ridge Trail up to Lafayette, northbound on the Garfield Ridge Trail. So you go up Garfield, you descend kind of that waterfall-y section on Garfield, and then go over to Galehead. And then you have that steep climb from Galehead Hut to South Twin. And then you kind of have smoother running over to like Bonds. You go over Bond Cliff, and then you have kind of a smooth descent down Bond Cliff, and then you get hit with the 6-7 miles of just Lincoln Woods rail bed, flat, easy running. And so that's clockwise. And I think the pros and cons, so a couple things to think about. Obviously, you have like a 6 or 7 mile stretch of really easy running on the Lincoln Woods Trail. So going clockwise, you do that last, and if you go counterclockwise, you do that first. And so I think that's one of the big things to think about. Do you want to start and tick the miles away at the beginning, or do you want that for the end when your legs are kind of already dead? And then another thing is water. So there's not between, if you're going clockwise, between the start and between Garfield, there is pretty much no water unless it's like super rainy and little streams and stuff are going across the trails. There's no like super reliable water source. So you have to pretty much start off with water for like 3 hours, which on a faster effort, maybe like 2 to 3 hours. And it's something to think about because if you go clockwise, you start with more water and you start climbing as opposed to running the flats. And then at the end, once you hit the Garfield Spring, so that would be the first water section, then you have Galehead Hut where you can get water. There's a couple water sources on the Bonds, and then on the Lincoln Woods Trail, you can get water there. So I think like the second half, if you go counterclockwise, has a lot of water. So it's more like preload water, and then at the end, just fill up as needed. Going counterclockwise, like I said, you get the flats out of the way first while your legs are fresh, an easy climb up to Bond Cliff, and then you kind of start getting into the more tougher terrain in the second half of the loop. So you head up Bond Cliff, you head over to Bond, South Twin, and then you descend that steep South Twin trail to Galehead Hut, which is going to be steeper and slower than kind of going uphill, at least relative paces. And then you go southbound on the Garfield Ridge Trail. And then when you hit that Garfield Spring, you pretty much have like 12 or 13 miles of no water till the end. So at that point, and that terrain is probably a little bit tougher. You don't have the Lincoln Woods Trail, so it's Garfield Ridge, Franconia Ridge, and then the descent down Osseo is pretty quick, but it's steeper than the descent off Bond Cliff. And so it can take a little bit, and that's your last chance to get water. So if you take a lot of water, it's probably going to weigh you down a little bit more. If you take a little bit, you might bonk, like some of these guys at the end of the route. So I think those are the big pros and cons. I guess the other pros and cons I think about are if you want to go up or down certain sections. So a few of like the notable ones that I think about, from Lafayette to when you from Lafayette to Garfield, I guess descending Lafayette towards Garfield, we'll call it. That is a pretty big descent / ascent. It's pretty rocky, pretty technical. So if you are going clockwise, you have to go down that. And if you're going counterclockwise, you go up it. So I don't think that it's one of those super steep, like you can't descend really fast on it, but it is technical. It is a long downhill that you're going to have. And then if you're going counterclockwise and you go up it, you're going to have a big climb. You're going to have a bigger climb when your legs are tired, kind of like halfway through the route. So I think that's one section. Would you rather climb up to Lafayette when your legs are tired, or would you rather kind of descend down a pretty long, steep, rocky, slower section of descent? I think another one on the Garfield Ridge Trail is descending from Garfield towards Galehead Hut. It's kind of like just this waterfall that pretty much you descend down. It's not long. It's maybe like a couple 100 feet, so it's, it's not super long, but it is like it's usually running water. The rocks are wet, slippery, and I think climbing up that going counterclockwise is going to be faster than going down it clockwise in like relative terms. So I guess when I'm saying relative terms, the way that I pace efforts, and I don't know if this is the correct way, but I think about miles in vert and how much like of that I can do per hour. And if I'm climbing up something steep and rocky, my miles in vert, are pretty good because you're going slower when you're going uphill. So you have more time to like adjust to the kind of technical terrain and it doesn't slow you down as much. But when you're going downhill, you're not really gaining any vertical. So it's just straight. Your pace is kind of what you're making on the route. And so if it's really steep and really rocky, like in the whites, you can be running 15, 20-minute miles on some of these crazy sections downhill, like running cadence. And so if you're not getting vert down and you're going 3 miles an hour on a really fast effort, like it's really not going to be kind of beneficial. So for me, if I have really, really technical sections, I always try to climb those if I can, if I think it makes sense. So that's another technical section. The next technical section would be South Twin. So between Galehead Hut and South Twin, if you're going clockwise, you go up it, so you climb it. And then if you're going counterclockwise, you go down it. That's another technical section. And then I wouldn't say technical, but thinking about the Bond Cliff descent / ascent, you got to think that is a fast section downhill, and it can be a fast section uphill. It's like pretty runnable for a while, and you're just going to move faster on that descent. So it's something you got to think about. Do I want a fast descent at the end, or do I want an easy first climb to like kind of get the legs going, not super steep, and I can move pretty fast on it. So I think those are the major sections of the trail that I kind of think about. Oh, I guess another section too that's kind of like it is really technical. It's shorter than some of the ones we just talked about, but it is technical. Is going from like uh, going down to Bond Cliff, essentially, like that ridge as you're going towards Bond Cliff from Bond. That is super rocky, super technical. And if you're going clockwise, you go down that towards the end when your legs are obviously going to be more fatigued and more tired. And if you're going counterclockwise, you get that at the beginning. And like I said, going uphill, really technical stuff is quicker than going downhill, and your legs are going to be fresher. So I think water, the flat section, and then those few steep sections are like things to think about how you want to run the Pemi Loop. So what are my thoughts? I personally think, and I think it depends on your strengths, like what you're most comfortable with. Like for me, I feel like I'm a better hiker, runner on technical terrain than I am just like a flat, non-technical or like a road runner. I definitely started hiking kind of more before I got into really trail running. And so I just think I'm better on rocky terrain as opposed to flat stuff. So for me, I really, and I don't even know if this is like counterintuitive, but I want to get the rocky technical stuff that like I'm better on. I want that when I'm fresher and feeling good. And then at the end, it's gonna just be flat, and I'm just gonna go like as hard as I can, and whatever I have left in the tank, I'll kind of empty it there on the flat stuff. Because if I start out on the flat stuff, I'm probably not going to be running as fast as I would like to be, or like it's probably going to feel a little bit harder, even though I'm not going as fast as some of these other guys. And so I'd rather just have it like at the end of the effort, just because it's kind of my weak spot. And I just like at that point, you're going to be tired anyway. So it's not like you have to be super sharp. You just have to like go hard. So I think that's one of the reasons why I would prefer to do it clockwise. I think another one is water management. I think I would rather just load up water at the beginning and then not have to worry at the end about bonking, um, or anything like that. It's just when you have to kind of deal with some of those things, like sometimes it doesn't take a ton of time to fill bottles and stuff, but like if I were to start lighter going counterclockwise and like fill up a few times, I would probably mess something up. Like I would get, a, more or less than I was planning to during the effort just because I'm stupid. Just because when you're running hard, sometimes you don't think clearly. And then not having to worry about bonking at the end because I really I don't know how much water that I would take, from Garfield Spring to get to the end. Like, I would probably take a liter, but I would definitely run out, I think. So it's like, do you want to take a liter and a half and make sure you have a lot of water, or do you want to like risk it and hope that you're not like dying of thirst coming down it? Um, and so at the beginning, so if you go if you go clockwise, then it's just like, all right, I'm gonna load up on water at the beginning. I'm gonna drink it quick, get it off me, and then I'll kind of just go bottle by bottle after that. Um, because I do think minimizing weight on these fast efforts is definitely a good thing to do. So, and then again, I think there's technical descents, each way. Um, so I don't know. Maybe the technical descents are a little bit faster if you were to go counterclockwise, but just for the Lincoln Woods and the water aspect, I think I would prefer clockwise. Um, And so Jack Hensel had the record and he did do it clockwise, but Jordan, Jake Aceto, David Sinclair, they all went counterclockwise. And honestly, from people that have done the Pemi Loop both ways and done it a bunch, like from just what I've heard, is people prefer counterclockwise. So I think I am probably in the minority. Part of me is like, I do think for myself, I think clockwise would probably be faster, but I may just be wrong because all of these people who Jake and Jordan, who both have like the two records, did it counterclockwise, and it just seems like more people are running it counterclockwise, for speed. So I think my declaration, I like clockwise, but counterclockwise is probably best. Probably best. Um, so that's kind of the route, the different directions. I did want to talk about a little bit of the splits and stuff on these times. So, because the one thing that I think about is, okay, the person who has the fastest time, Jordan, what did he do different than everybody else? Um, and I think the one thing that obviously is different is he wasn't planning on racing it that day. So, like in my head, is like, does that mean that everybody else kind of went out too hard? Is that just like a nerves anxiety thing where people just like psych themselves out, like, wow, this is going to be really hard, and they just don't sleep as good or whatever it is. Um, I think there is something to say about like just having good days. Like people can just have really good days, and it's probably a day that he was just having a really good day. But yeah, I do think about the pacing of it, a good amount. Although I did look at Jordan's time, so we can kind of run through some of this stuff. But Jordan, I think he said and I listened to like an interview or something or a write up, and I've heard different things on it. And I think he just went out on a training run. But so I looked at his Strava file. If you could go down his splits on Lincoln Woods, his splits go and like each of the first 5 miles, you get about like 100 feet of gain. So it's like very flat, but it is some gain. He runs a 650, 630, 7 minutes, 640 on Lincoln Woods. So those are all like low six gaps, um, which is very fast. So that for me, that is not a casual training run. Low six gaps to start it out. So I wouldn't say that Jordan was like pacing it super, super slow at the beginning. Like he was clearly running very fast. But I think probably just his mindset of like, oh, we're just out here for a run. Like we're feeling good, we're moving, probably is beneficial in some way to like running a really strong time. Um, because the other thing I do think about, and I don't have like all the paces here, so um, Yeah, so this is David's time. So if we look at the paces, David Sinclair actually ran those first 5 miles a good bit faster than Jordan Fields. So he ran 6:30, 6:28, 6:29, 6:23, 6:34. So those are all, 20 to 30 seconds faster than Jordan. So maybe, he was going out a little bit harder than Jordan, but he's also extremely fit. Like one of the fittest people in the world. So like and Jordan probably is too slash was too at that time. So those paces just probably don't feel as crazy. But I'm sure like David Sinclair was feeling those paces at the beginning. Like he was going for a fast effort there. Um, so I wonder like, is it because Jordan kind of went out smoother at the beginning and then he was able to save like going hard for those steep technical sections? Because I think when you're on an effort in the whites, moving fast over those technical sections can like make or break your time, I guess. But like there will be days where you feel like, oh, I'm moving over this really smooth, and then there are days where like, oh, I'm not. This the technicality is just slowing me down so much. And so for me, like I was saying, the reason that I want to run it clockwise is just because I'm gonna be more fresh for those technical sections where I think are probably like where you get the most time made up. That could be one thing, but who knows? Who knows? I mean, it looks like they ran similar times. Um, Another thing, I don't have a splits up right now, and I don't have service at the trailhead, but I believe another note, Jack, when he ran it, so he ran a 5:35. I think his last 6 miles were he averaged maybe about like a 7 minute pace on the Lincoln Woods out. So he went clockwise, which so obviously he's doing it at the end. These guys are doing it at the beginning, but he ran kind of like a more conservative, or not a more conservative, but he definitely did those 20 miles of the most technical stuff a little bit faster, I think. Um, and I can't look section by section. Like it's going to be hard to go section by section. So I could be wrong, but maybe there is something to not going all out on that flat section, and saving your legs for the technical. And it depends on what your strengths are too. Like for me, I'm sure like if you're a little bit better on roads or like super fast and you've been doing roads for a while, you may like want to get that section out first, and that just like won't hurt you as much as the other stuff. So um, I think there's just things to think about, and yeah, it's really interesting and really cool. Like that route is insane. And we'll see if it ever goes down, and if it's in the near future here. So I mean, it would be cool if David Sinclair gave it another go, but who knows? And yeah, I mean, either way, all those times, like, I mean, if you run under 6 hours on a Pemi Loop, you are flying. Anything under 7 hours too is like flying. That road is super hard, just like a super hard 50K. So that was kind of the Pemi Loop breakdown. Those are my thoughts on the Pemi. I want to run a hard Pemi, so I've only done a full Pemi actually once. That was one of my first like long kind of ultra marathon in the White Mountains. It was probably like 4 years ago. I ran an 8:20, so I was just getting into it, but I was happy with that 8:20 at the time, and I did kind of want to get back to the Pemi Loop this year. My season didn't go fully as planned, but I will get to doing a hard Pemi at some point in the future. Maybe it will be next year, but that was kind of one of the objectives that I had to do this fall, but I did not get to it. But the Pemi Loop will always be there, and I'm going to give it a hard go at some point. All right, so that was the Pemi Loop talk. I think the next thing I want to talk about was kind of Run Mountain Peaks, the podcast, the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. No, just about like kind of like what I am thinking about it and like why kind of I started it. I have been kind of like off social media for the most part for like a while. And so I think like starting this was definitely kind of like definitely like a new thing. And like, not that I've been, back on social media. Like, I don't know. YouTube is social media. I think like Strava social media. So like getting back on some of these things is definitely um, kind of getting back into the social media side of things. But for me, I think, you see a lot of people, a lot of different people, and they all kind of like, I don't know if it's a newer phenomenon or, social media obviously has changed things like how things get put out there. But, there are so many people that just like put things out there or start different things and are just super successful at them. Like whether it be some sort of social media, YouTube, brand, little business, like all of these different things. I feel like there's so many things that you just that people are just trying and like really succeeding at now. And for me, I really just wanted, I love running in the mountains. I love talking about running in the mountains. I love training theory. Like I'm always going off to people who don't really run a ton or like who probably don't care as much about like all of these details about White Mountains and efforts and training and different workouts and all this stuff. And yeah, I've learned a lot over the year. Like I've spent like thousands of hours doing this stuff, reading, learning about this stuff, a little bit of reading, a lot of listening to podcasts about it. And yeah, so I was like, what everyone else that started things has, like they're not really different. They just have like self-belief and just um I, I don't know. They just it's kind of just inspiring to see other people do things and put themselves out there. And so I was like, I maybe I should start doing that or doing that a little bit more. So um that's kind of why I started the YouTube channel. I mean, obviously I go to these mountains and see all these crazy things a ton. So like I saw that there was a little cheap lightweight camera. I was like, that shoots 4K. Like, all right, I'll see what I can kind of do. Um so started kind of posting some of those videos. I was posting those videos in the winter, and then I think I got really busy and I was like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, um, filming the videos is kind of it's just like an added thing that you have to do on these runs. And like I do really like enjoy going out on a run, like unplugged, and just enjoying being out there. And so I think it was kind of maybe getting in the way of that a little bit. But yeah, no, at the end of the summer, I brought it back. I did a couple things, and then instead of just focusing on doing like, videos of these mountains, like talking about some of the training theory, started doing this podcast, like talking about some of the races, because like some of these races and FKTs don't really um the people in the area know about them, but they don't get a ton of like coverage from like, different people. And so, I've done a good amount of them. I tune into all this stuff. And so just sharing my knowledge on what I know and what I think about things. I figured this was like a good place to do that. I think I also made a website and I'm compiling. I'm in the process of kind of compiling all the FKTs in the White Mountains, all the times, and I have some things that I want to do from that, just like having like a central place to kind of go and find all this stuff, because these are all things that I just feel like I couldn't find out there. So I'm like, why not just start putting this stuff out there? Um, yes, like I said, starting the podcast. I think I also this winter, I think I'm going to take an marathon, ultra running coaching course, and potentially start dabbling in some coaching or like at least do more of these kind of like coaching training theory talks, and post stuff about that. And so, yeah, it all kind of falls on the umbrella of like running mountain peaks. That is the run mountain peaks. I mean, especially in the fall. I love the fall. The fall is my favorite time of year, but just the feeling of being out in the mountains and feeling fit and feeling strong, running up mountains on a good day is just like cannot compare to anything else. It is just one of the best feelings. And yeah, so there's a lot into it. And so that's like kind of why I started Run Mountain Peaks. And I think this time around, I'm definitely not going to delete the channel. I feel bad. There are a handful of people that were very supportive and all in, and I feel like I let them down when I deleted the channel at the beginning. But I'm back, and I hope I can make up for it now. Um, And so, yeah, no, I'm feeling better about it. And I think, I've been trying a lot of different things. I've been trying to post some different videos on YouTube. I've been trying to do, the podcast. I did, a couple like blog stuff. And I think I'm getting a sense of like what I like to do more. Like, I don't know. YouTube is kind of crazy. I've tried some of the, not like clickbaity, but like some of the like popping titles, like most terrifying trail in the whites, like some of that stuff. And it's cool to see. It's kind of like I'm kind of like a numbers guy, and so it's cool to see like how the algorithm and like what people click on and how much they like on things or whatever, how they watch different things. Um, so it's kind of like cool to see some of that. It's also like not cool because sometimes you'll post a video and like everyone clicks on in like 10 seconds. And it's like, all right, people did not like that video. But I think, yeah, there was obviously going to be a learning curve and there is going to be a huge learning curve, but I do feel better about I'm just going to put out what I want to put out. I'm not going to do like the whole clickbaity. I don't care about all that stuff. Like, I'm just going to post like what I think about things, what I like to post, and that's going to be it. And I think that that's like a better way to do it than be like, oh, this video, you said this and got this. It's like, I don't know. Some of those videos that I posted are probably a little bit cringy. I don't know. Who knows? But I just want to do a good job of like posting things that I truly believe in. I just my organic, real thoughts. And just like cool things that I see in the mountains. So that's kind of the plan for the podcast, the YouTube channel, all that stuff. And Yeah, so I just want to touch on that. I had a few thoughts there. And then the next thing, this is kind of like leading into what I was just saying there, deer hunting. So this is kind of like obviously kind of a random topic, but I do think like, obviously this is Run Mountain Peaks, but I also think I'm just going to talk about whatever like I'm interested in. Um, and how, for me, every day and like most of all of my days are thinking about like running trails, like getting faster, getting fitter, training, getting up north, all this stuff. But there are like a handful of other things that I like and I'm like passionate about, and like so I'm just gonna start throwing that in. This is not have to do with running mountain peaks fully, but I'm just gonna start throwing some of this stuff in because again, like I'm just gonna put out really who I am, and try to get over the fact of like I think I've done a better job in the last couple of years, maybe year or so, of just being like I am who I am, uh, and I shouldn't like try to be anybody that I'm not. Right? Like I am who I am. I feel like I'm a decent person. Always trying to work on that and be a better person in general. But just be who you are. If people don't like you, they don't like you. That's all right. There's gonna be people like that in the world. Uh, and it is what it is. So deer hunting, this is like one of my other hobbies, and obviously it's the fall, like deer season has started, so I figured I'm just gonna do like I'll do like a little blurb about like um what I think about deer hunting and like how I do it. So I guess going back, like when I was growing up, my dad did a lot of hunting and fishing. He grew up fishing a ton, him and his brothers. And so like growing up, I did a good amount of fishing with him. And then when I was young, he started getting into hunting. And so I did a little bit of that when I was young. And that was kind of like my first, we didn't hike a lot when I was younger. That was kind of like my first, like how I really grew to just like being outside. Like I think growing up my whole life, I always just liked, there was like a trail or a piece of woods. I always just liked going outside and like getting out in the woods. And obviously like doing those things, I just like being out there and it was cool. Made a lot of good memories and stuff like that. And then as I got into high school and college, I kind of, I don't know why. I mean, I don't know. I guess I kind of know why a little bit, but I was like pretty embarrassed almost, or not embarrassed, but I just didn't put out there that I like hunted and fished to like pretty much anybody. My close friends knew, but I didn't really put it out there too much. It wasn't like it was like a secret, but I just like didn't feel super comfortable. I mean, I grew up in southern New Hampshire, like in a suburb, so it wasn't like like New Hampshire. It's very rural, but I just feel like there weren't a ton of people that I knew or like around me that did it. So I was kind of um and maybe like a little bit closed about it. But I still did it. And, as I got into college, just I had less and less time. And I got to a point where I just didn't go too much. And sometimes I just like was like, I don't know if I like it. I feel like it's, and we'll talk about what it kind of is, but just spending a lot of time, and I wasn't really fully into it anymore. Um, and so kind of got out of it. But then after college, I got into fitness. I was doing a lot of weightlifting and got into fitness a lot, and kind of more um got into like eating healthy, like eating right, diet, nutrition, stuff like that. And went to school in Maine, lived in Massachusetts for a while, and then I ended up moving back to New Hampshire. And when I moved back, I got back into deer hunting specifically. And I think that's kind of like the main. I don't do too much fishing. I do one fishing trip a year with my buddies, but um, deer hunting is kind of like the one thing that I still do, and I really enjoy getting out and doing it. And it got to the point where I really valued. So, growing up, we would go out hunting, and then my dad pretty much we processed the whole deer, in our garage. And so we really did like start to finish hunted, processed, packaged, the venison. And we had just like, I mean, it's some of the best meat that you can get, like super lean, 100% clean, like lives in nature, right? Not in these big factory farms. And it got to the point where I started being, taking some pride in like, wow, like getting your own food, and eating wild game. It was very, I started coming around on it, and I always love getting outside. Like in the fall, I just feel like I have that itch to get out into the woods. And so like kind of as I started trail running, getting into the mountains more, I think just like being outside and these outdoor activities just grew on me. And so, yeah, I got back into it more in the last handful of years. During deer season in the fall, I go out a bunch, and we get a bunch of deer. And so like the past 2 years, I don't even buy red meat at the grocery store. Um, I just eat wild game. I get one piece of salmon at the grocery store, and then I eat like mostly venison and a lot of wild game like throughout the year for the other like 11 months. So, me and my dad, we ran out. Our family ran out of venison maybe like a few weeks ago, and then hunting, maybe like a month ago, and then hunting season started. So it turned into like taking pride in like getting your own clean meat. And it was just, I like getting out in the woods. I like doing it. And so it kind of like started growing on me in different ways. And I feel like there's been a movement back to, not back to like hunting, but more like, yeah, providing for yourself, doing, organic, getting good quality food. And so maybe, yeah, I think I feel better about it now, and definitely don't like hide it. I'm definitely not embarrassed about it anymore. And it's just like kind of who I am. Um, I just like going out and deer hunting in the fall. Um, and so yeah, that's kind of like the deer hunting thing. So I'll probably mix in a little bit of like some hunting stories in the fall, maybe. I actually had a little encounter with a deer recently last week. I might post a video tomorrow. I took it on my phone. I don't know if it's good or anything, but I may be posting that, so keep a heads up. But yeah, that's another thing that I'll just touch on. I'll just talk about it as I want to on this podcast. And I think like a lot of people, like the stereotypical hunter is like drinking beer, shooting guns in the woods. Um, and that is like so far from the opposite of me. Um, so I definitely would not say I'm like a typical, there are those people, and it sucks that they give like a bad name to hunters, but there are a lot of people that do it right, that love the outdoors, that love deer. I think a lot of people, it's hard to wrap your head around, but like hunters love wild game and probably care about them more than, the regular person. Um, and their well-being, their habitat. And so I think there's like a misconception for a lot of people, because you see some of the bad parts of hunting, that like most hunters are very passionate about wildlife, about the outdoors, conservation, all of these things. And I think that gets misconstrued a little bit. If you see like beer cans at a trailhead or something like that, you run in. And I hate running into hunters like that. Like I feel like that's what partly ruined it when I was growing up. Like you would just run into some of these guys who just, I don't know. There are some definitely some characters out there, and in every hobby there are people like that, but that just kind of ruin it a little bit for other people. And so I really like the last few years. Like most of the hunting that I do, I spend more time hunting with a bow than guns. And the woods are quieter. It's like a much longer season for bow. And I like getting out into different places, and yeah, so it's really turned into something that I like to do in the fall. I still train 6 days a week in the fall. So running is definitely still like the number one priority. Always want to get my runs in, getting up into the mountains, but I do mix it in from time to time. And honestly, I am very much just want to get venison for the year. I like getting out too, but once I get, enough deer for the year, then I like waking up and go to the mountains instead of going out hunting. So, but they're both good. And yeah, so and I still prioritize running. I still run through it. So it's a good balance. I think the fall is super busy for me, but it is a good balance. So I guess that's kind of my hunting spiel. Yeah, and I'm sure some people will maybe get turned off on this by that, and it is what it is. I'm just gonna be me, and if you have any questions about hunting too, like the other thing too, I think it's just, yeah, there's just maybe some misconceptions about it. Like, obviously you have New Hampshire Fish and Game. I think hunters are the biggest contributors to New Hampshire Fish and Game and conservation, just through hunting tags and all these things that you kind of have to go through. I think a lot of these people are the eyes and ears for New Hampshire Fish and Game. Hunters actually, they fund conservation and conservation efforts, but also what people don't realize is they collect data for the state. And so, like, when you harvest deer, everyone who gets a deer collects data for the state, and they use that to pretty much help conserve populations for different game species. Um, and so, hunters raise money, and they're like the biggest conservation. Up in the north, obviously it's all woods up here, but like down south and in communities, if you don't have people hunting, the deer populations get out of hand. More diseases, more deer incidents, more everything, more ticks. There was a big thing recently. I was just talking about this with a buddy, that deer are carrying, the more deer have been moving up north, they've been carrying more ticks with the longer tick season, and they've been giving more ticks to the moose, and so the moose population is hurting. And so, yeah, I mean, Fish and Game does a great job of like allocating deer tags, and hunters kind of go out, gather the data, and help manage the deer herd and the deer population, to help all different kinds of wildlife. So yeah, very conservation heavy. Like hunters help with that. I think, anytime that I can eat a bunch of venison over factory farmed meat is a huge benefit. I try not to eat factory farms food if I can help it. And it's hard, obviously everything's getting super expensive, but I definitely don't blame them, because it's really hard to feed billions of people, but also, those are just like horrible conditions. Like wild game lives their life in like the most awesome places, like, no pesticides or just herbicides, for what they're, unless they're near some sort of agricultural field, but, no hormones or any of this stuff. Like they're just out in nature. And so, the meat is really good. They live an awesome life. If anyone who eats meat dislikes hunting, I don't know what to tell you. Like that seems crazy to me. That's just letting somebody else do the dirty work. So I'm not gonna, like I said, not gonna hide. That's like part of what I do, and maybe we'll talk about it on here. If you don't like it, all good. Um, feel free to tune out. But, still the main topics are going to be running and mountain related. So, and I do want to, as I've been up in the mountains more, I've never deer hunted in the mountains, but some people do it, which is crazy because hunting is very hard. You can go out a ton of times and never get anything. Like, I think a lot of people think you go out in the woods, you see something, you shoot it. I've spent lots, hours and hours and days of my time just sitting in a tree, looking at other trees, seeing nothing. So, um, yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to get a deer. And up here in the woods, like there's millions of acres. They can be anywhere. The population is less dense up here, but some people do it. And so I do want to get out in the mountains and just see like if I can even find some deer sign out here this fall. And so maybe I bring a camera along and just, show what I find. But yeah, I think that would be cool. And, that ties into the mountain stuff. But yeah, 9 months out of the year, you probably won't hear much about deer hunting, and then the main stuff will still be mountain running, White Mountain stuff, training, etc. All right, so that was the hunting spiel. Lastly, we're gonna do the Bubbas. Second to lastly, kind of lastly, we're gonna do the Bubbas results. So I talked about Bubbas, the last man standing event that Run the Whites puts on. They held it last weekend, and there was a new course record. Lucas Janulitis, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. He won with a new course record of 185 and a half miles, breaking Ed Clifford's old record of, I think, 150 something. Just insane. Just insane. So how many laps is that? So each lap was 3.5 miles. So 180 divided by 3.5. So 53. So over 53 hours, over 2 days, running 3.5 miles every hour on the hour. Lucas wins. He's from Gorham, 24 years old, and he just won the last skier standing earlier this winter that Run the White puts on. So like the uphill skiing event that's similar to Bubba's. I think he went for like 70 hours. So I think the ski event is a little bit easier. Obviously it's less impact, but I think it's easier to kind of go longer. But this dude he's got grit for sure. So he wins both of those. That's just, obviously crazy mental, crazy physical endurance. This dude's got grit and he's young. So good for him. Congrats. And also in last man standing races, I think the winner is obviously always highlighted, but the second thing is the assist. So the second place person, Aaron Copeland, he ran 182 miles. Lucas doesn't run 185 and a half if he doesn't have somebody going with him. So second place is almost as important as first place. So Aaron Copeland had also a crazy showing. I think they have both done Bubbas before. So they have had some experience with the course and everything. So congrats to those two. And then Katie Melski, 27 from Cambridge. She ran 168 miles and she was the top female finisher. And so, yeah, that is a long time. 2 straight days to be out there. Your brain starts to go, your body goes, but these guys battled it out. And I think the people want to see, or at least I want to see Lucas versus Ed Clifford. Get Ed back on the course and get Lucas out there because both of these guys just seem like they can go forever. We actually may be able to glitch the matrix or the simulation if Lucas and Ed do a last man standing event with each other. 2 humans that just will never quit. It may just go on forever, and we'll finally glitch the simulation, and we'll all know. We'll all find out. Okay. But yeah, so that was a good turnout. And then so we'll read a few other names here. Connor Brown, Erica Notini, Andrew Johnston, Michael Conley, August Myers. They were all tied for 4th. August was 8th. The rest of those guys were tied for 4th at 150 miles. So they put down 150 miles, which is crazy efforts. And then I believe, look here, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 people ran 100 miles. So there was a bunch of people tied for 18th, but 26 total people ran 100 miles. I don't know if they give out a belt buckle, but when you run 100 miles, Uh, that that is a tough accomplishment. So congrats to all those people and anyone who showed out. I mean, like then you have 27 Thomas Hanlon. He ran 88 miles. That's also no joke. So uh, Bubbas is a cool event. That's kind of like one of the last trail races, I think, ultras in the whites for the year. I think there are some other ones. There's the Jackson Turkey Trot, the Blackout 5K, 10K. But as far as like ultra long distance trail, ultra mountain stuff, as it wasn't a mountain thing, but that's pretty much it for the year. So hopefully in the next, or not hopefully, but hopefully we have a few more weeks of good running before the trails get all icy. But November, definitely the ice starts forming and the trail season comes to a close until it all snows. So uh, that was the Bubbas recap. And then Tecumseh. So we'll just talk about Tecumseh for a little bit before we wrap this up. So yeah, last week I ran Tecumseh from Triple I Road, so gave that a good effort, and ended up getting the Strava crown there. June Boulet had a really fast time on it, and was able to just sneak under there. So I was happy with that run, and had a little Tecumseh reflection. So I think it was 2015, I actually found the date and put it on my grid spreadsheet. In 2015, I did Tecumseh from Triple I Road with a couple friends, and I can't remember the caption. I remember we did, one of my friend's sister was just like, "Hey, you guys should do this. It's an awesome hike. It's a 4,000 footer. Go try this." And so we did, and I didn't know anything about them. They probably didn't know anything about 4,000 footers or hiking. We just went up there and did it one day, and I remembered the two things that I remember from that hike. One, we get up to I think it's like 36 or 3,700 feet, and then you have a couple hundred feet of drop before you get up to the Tecumseh summit. And I remember when we were going down, we were all like, we saw somebody coming back, and we were like, "Is there two mountains out here?" Because we didn't know there were two mountains. And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, just keep going." We clearly were like, "Okay, these guys don't know what they're doing." And we were just like, "This is insane. We're gonna do two mountains today. This is just nuts." So I do remember that being like, I mean, this is BS. What are we doing out here? And then the other thing that I remember, I think one of them had a caption. It was like, the caption was like, Tecumseh by the numbers, and I think it was like four. The numbers were 4, 6, and 8. I think it was, I think it was 4 sandwiches, 6 miles, 8 hours. I'm pretty sure that was the breakdown. Which I'm thinking about that being like, is that even possible that it took us 8 hours to go up to Tecumseh? I mean, no. Hey, everyone at their own pace, and yeah, everyone enjoy the mountain how you like. Um, any time is a good time, but holy smokes, if we were out there for 8 hours, that is insane. And then, the ascent that I had, I did it in 30. It was just under 40 minutes. So that was kind of like, I thought that was a 10 years later. I run Tecumseh 7 hours faster than I did the first time. So that was kind of like a little reflection that I thought was kind of funny. I thought I would share because that was in my mind bank. I remember we had a little sign that we drew a couple mountains on and put 4003 on it and took a picture at the summit. So I don't know if I have that picture. Maybe I can put it in, but I don't know if I can find it. But that was my Tecumseh story. But did a good effort on Tecumseh. And honestly, yeah, the second peak I was again probably in the effort. I was like, oh, this is BS. But as I'm going down that little section right before the final on Tecumseh, I don't know if I talked about this, but I had an ankle roll earlier in the season that kind of set my summer back and it took longer to heal. I'm coming down, and I haven't done any hard efforts recently. I'm coming down and I re-roll my ankle, and I'm like, oh my gosh, not like this. And I was able to kind of shake it off on the descent, get through the descent, and then climbing, it didn't hurt. So it ended up being fine. But coming down, my ankle really hurt, and I was like, oh my gosh, it was just finally starting to feel better. I can't believe I just did that. Um, I am so upset. But now, a little over a week later, it's actually feeling better. I mean, usually ankle rolls, I can kind of get through them. The one this year was just like really bad, and it was actually bothering me inside. Like it felt like my internal ankle ligament on like the inside of my ankle was hurting for a long time. Um, and so when I re-rolled it, it was just kind of the outside. It was one of those regular ones that hurts for a couple days, but then it feels okay. And I gave it some rest. I've been biking and stuff. So I think I got away, not really getting too hurt on that. But I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can deal with another ankle roll in the coming months. So, but no, that was a Tecumseh story. All was good there. And yeah, I'm hoping to get a few more good mountain runs in before the end of the year, before the season gets all iced in. Um, but yeah, the main goal right now is just stay healthy. Obviously, this is like ankle roll season with the leaves and everything. You got to kind of go gingerly on the descents, but yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this week. Hopefully enjoyed it. Um, Stay tuned for more videos this week. Uh, yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, stay tuned for more. Tune into to next week. We got anything on the docket for next week? And we won't give anything away yet. We'll let people wait. But yeah, we'll have another podcast next Sunday. And until then, talking about the ankle, stay healthy, get faster. The only two things that matter almost in running. Yeah. But that's all I got. We'll see you next time. Peace.